Hey everyone, welcome to Collider Heroes. We're here at episode number 25. I'm Jon Schnepp, and we're bringing you the superheroes, supervillains of the movies, cinematic world, and television, and a lot of other comic book cool stuff. As always, we're here with John Campea. What's up, John?
Hey, good to be back. 25, it's the quarter century mark.
I know, right?
I'm excited.
I feel like an old man. And we're doing a crossover of worlds. We've got Jedi Councils, and of course, movie talks. Schmoes know the Kristian Harloff, ladies and gentlemen. He's here.
Hey.
25 episodes in, my first one. Finally, I made it. I made it big time. I'm on Hero.
Yes, we had to have him.
Finally.
So we're gonna bring some of that extra fucking Jedi knowledge over here. You know what I'm saying? All right. So started off right off the top. Number one, we got Zack Snyder calling out Marvel as flavor of the week. While talking about Batman, why he's featured heavily since it's a new interpretation of the character in the Batman v Superman film, he kind of called out Marvel's recent film Antman as being flavor of the week, while talking about Superman and Batman as being somewhat bigger than that, in that they're like mythological in tone. You know what? I mean, a lot of that can be taken out of context because we didn't hear him actually saying it if he was like being more jokey. But what do you think about that, John, as far as like the difference between the characters, one being a flavor of the week, the other being more mythological?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, he's right. I mean, he was talking about the larger conversation was about Batman and Superman. He said, look, these aren't just two come and go superheroes. These are the two, most pillar of all superheroes, Batman and Superman. And then he made the unfortunate choice of words and, talking about flavor of the week, things like Antman. Now, if he were to say something like, because his point is accurate. If he was to say something like, the more unknown ones that we're just kind of bringing to the audience for the first time, like Antman, if he'd said that, that's one thing. But remember, Snyder, for instance, and Christopher Nolan, had a bit of a history of having some fun back and forth. Remember they put out those different videos and stuff like that? They were having some fun back and forth with their DC properties. Never so much with Kevin Feige crossing over into the Marvel properties. But I really don't think this is much of an issue at all. I think it was just a choice of words. I don't think this was him slamming on Antman as some people are trying to interpret it as him saying, I loved Antman. I think it's a great film. But I just think the overall point he was simply trying to make was this is a staunch, established pillars of stone superheroes, Batman and Superman, versus, the ones that are just kind of the general audience may not know. We're bringing them out because he's doing that too. Nobody in the general audience knows who Cyborg is or anything like that. So he's doing it too. So I'm sure he's cognizant of that. So I think it was just poor choice of words. That's all.
How about you, Kristian?
I think he's playing a game a little bit too, because once you're in a fun way, and I think because everyone knows, they know it, that Marvel right now owns the game. They have had since Iron Man 1 to do it. They've been doing it well. And of course they're getting into their flavors of the month because that's where they are right now, because as the audience are going to see it, they're going to say, all right, well look, Guardians worked. Nobody knew what the hell that was. Ant-Man worked. Nobody knew. So they're going to do more and more of that. Eventually, if DC, the cinematic universe, is successful, they will be doing a lot more of that as well. And they're planning to do it anyway, like John mentioned, with Cyborg and other characters too. Right. But he is also putting together this movie, Batman v Superman, which does have the two most iconic superheroes of all time fighting against one another. So he's got to say, I've got the guys right now.
Yeah. Right.
I've got the guys. And you guys are going to see those guys go at it. And eventually they're going to shake hands and then fight other big villains that will spin off into flavors of the month.
Right. And there's pressure that comes with this too. Because imagine, I don't know, let's use like an all-time, you are the head coach of a galactic basketball team. Oh, and by the way, you're getting Michael Jordan and LeBron James on your team and you're the coach. Well, now you're an idiot if you lose. And like Snyder, you got to be careful about propping yourself up. I've got the two greatest heroes of all time. Okay, that's good. But now if you F this up, you are a goat.
Joel Schumacher had Batman at one point too.
Right. Well, and this is it's a dangerous game because it's Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, and I guess we've heard everybody else is in it too, like Flash, Cyborg, Hawkman, who else? Blue Beetle. I don't know who else they're chucking in there, but everybody, they're introducing the cinematic DC universe within this. Man of Steel was like the appetizer. This is the main course. So, I mean, what he's saying, yeah, I agree. It's not like he's like saying Ant-Man sucked, but he's just saying like, look, they've already, but he's not referring to it as like Marvel's already introduced all their heavy hitters. They've already successfully introduced Thor and Iron Man and Hulk and Captain America. And then within that, the Justice League of Marvel the Avengers. So they've already done that incredibly successfully. And now they're like having fun with some of their unknown characters like Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a gigantic hit that, like out of the blue. So Antman was a real successful film. So I don't think it's flavor of the week. I think you're right. It's like they're exploring more, but why would he, hey, he's playing on the other side right now. Yeah. So it's a little fun. That's definitely what I think it is. Hey, let's go to number 2. We got Rachel McAdams. And she's going to be possibly Clea in Doctor Strange. This actress recently announced she is the female lead opposite Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Is she going to be the otherworldly Clea? I mean, right now, we were talking about this on Movie Talk earlier today. This is like an all-star, like slam dunk casting event. I mean, even if I don't even know if the movie could suck because it has so much amazing star quality talent.
So did Gangster Squad.
Yeah, it's literally taking you could give them soppy words of nothingness and they would like transform it into like Shakespearean, like ultra dimensional godliness. Who knows? I mean, these are the best actors we have on the planet right now, all in one super weird horror film. Kristian, what do you think about this casting?
I love Rachel McAdams, and I love the way that Marvel casts in general. They do casting well. They have been, and not even with their acting, with the directors, they do it well. So I am happy to hear that she's going to be in it. I'm a big fan. I have been for a very long time. I was kind of bummed when she took that really long hiatus to where she was doing a movie here and there. It seems like over the last year, 2 years, you're seeing a lot of her.
Right.
And she's popping up. And I remember she was rumored to play Lois Lane in Bryan Singer's version. That was, 10 years ago? And that never came to fruition. So to see her now in the age of, like we were just talking about with Marvel right now, as the dominant force, and she's joining the team up against Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, to be honest, I don't know enough about the character. I kind of don't want to. Doctor Strange, to me, is a property that I was always aware of. I never got into the comics.
So you're saying he's a flavor of the week.
He's a flavor of,
or exactly. Zack Snyder would refer to this as Doctor Strange, a flavor of the month.
A flavor of the month. But to me, it's a flavor that I want to keep on having, because so far what I like the surrealism of it. I like the little tie-in already that they did in Antman. I want to see more of what this universe is going to be. It seems like it's going to be right up my alley. So I'm trying to stay away from a lot of what the comic is and who the characters are. It's, to me, kind of going away from it. The character looks cool. Right. Or that's just a great image that Ray pulled. But either way, it's a good call to have her in.
I mentioned this earlier on Movie Talk. This is like whenever we have like a female who's cast in a superhero role, Ray somehow manages to get the most hyper-sexualized image that someone actually made. So I really doubt that Clea is going to look like that. I mean, that version of her is from the 60s, that kind of Steve Ditko outfit, and then someone just kind of did like a cool cosplay pseudo painting of it. What do you think, John?
Well, first of all, on the Rachel McAdams thing, we talked about this on Movie Talk. She's got the it factor. She holds a screen, she draws all the attention to herself, and then she carries the acting talent to carry it once she does draw the attention to her. She's an amazing actress, good Canadian kid. I'm really glad to see her in this movie. That is awesome. Should point out, though, there is nothing so far to suggest she's going to be Clea. Nothing. She hasn't said it. The studio hasn't said it. Nobody has said that. So just in our conversations about, because it's understandable why we might speculate she could be that character.
Right.
I just want to make sure in our conversation we don't give the false impression that we've heard she's playing that character. We have not. But you were pointing out that what adds to the legitimacy maybe, or giving you a good reason to speculate that, is the fact that it depends on, if she is that, then that goes well with who we're speculating Milkinson might be, right? So
Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah. It would make sense, but just so we're clear, we're not saying this is who she's going to be. Nobody said who she's going to be yet.
I'm saying that she's playing Clea and that Mads Mikkelsen is playing Dormammu because that makes sense.
Well, that would as a pairing, that would give a lot more legitimacy.
Because they said Mads Mikkelsen's going to be playing a villain role in Doctor Strange. We've already got Chiwetel Ejiofor playing Baron Mordo. If they are going to introduce, as they've already stated, these alternate realms, that's where Clea comes from. That's where Dormammu comes from.
What a cast! I mean, already just hearing it. So she's. I like the fact that she's not just playing some kind of damsel in distress. Like, she's gonna have powers, right? So that's.
I think so. I mean, it really
if she plays Clea,
yeah,
she'll have powers.
It's hard to tell. I mean, yes and no. I mean, everyone from that other dimension doesn't just automatically have sorcerer powers and stuff. So Dormammu's sort of like this despot of this other realm. So let's go on and move on to number 3. We've got Drew Goddard weighing in on his writing style and his script of Sinister Six, and now he's back on Daredevil season 2. So we've got that third reboot of Spider-Man now, and it's over at Marvel in their cinematic universe. Drew was working on trying to expand the Sony version of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 and taking that on the Sinister Six and all those villains that you saw at the very end with like Doc Ock and the Vulture and the Rhino and that. And he was explaining it in like a couple of interviews as what, he's holding it still tight to the chest because he said, hey, you never know. They might want to use parts of it, so I don't want to reveal the whole story. But he was saying it was epic, and he was really into what he was doing. But now that he's back on Daredevil season 2, he's not show running it. He gave that over to DeKnight on the first season, and now 2 of the other writers have kicked on to be the showrunners for season 2. But on both seasons, he was able to just come in and talk about Matt Murdock, and he's more than happy about that. I mean, so far, Daredevil season 1 was a hit. I can't wait to see season 2, introducing the Punisher and knowing his involvement in it as just a writer and helping inform Matt Murdock as the character to the other writers and probably writing a script or 2 himself. And for myself, I'm really excited about it. John, what do you think?
Well, I mean, whenever you can have some success, when you can string some continuity to that success and bring it along, that's a good thing. I mean, we were really excited when he was going to show run season 1 of Daredevil. Yeah. And I was just as excited here, Stephen DeKnight, who was, of course, the showrunner, one of my all-time favorite shows, Spartacus, that he took it over, did a great job, whatever. Yeah. But understanding that that consistency is still going to be there. You mentioned Stephen DeKnight hand off the baton for showrunning to guys who were already on the show, which is great. Having Goddard come back to add more of that as well, I think that's great. So for me, this is good news.
I love that he's coming back to Daredevil. I think it's great. I think his tone fits that world so perfectly. And because of what was happening at Sony at the time when he was doing, you don't want to waste his talents in that mess. It was a mess at the time. Like everything what he was developing, the story itself might have been phenomenal, but the people in charge at the time were not handling properties well. Right. So who knows what would have happened to his version or what he would have been pushed into doing. So I'm glad that he's back in the Daredevil world because he is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe now because there's been rumors that Daredevil will somehow tie into the Cinematic Universe eventually, somehow. I hope that's the case.
I don't think that's ever going to happen.
I don't know. I think Daredevil...
Especially with now the split between Feige, the movie division of Marvel, and the television of Marvel going more and more this way, I think it's even less likely today.
Good point, but I think that because Daredevil is so popular, and if season 2 and season 3, and especially if the Punisher becomes really popular, I think it's going to be tough to keep those versions of Daredevil and the Punisher out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But you might be absolutely right. But I just think that with popularity and everything too, that all being said, that Drew Goddard there helping now with the writing and helping showrunner, because helping the showrunners, they're going to listen to him too if he's got advice. And so this is great news.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, it shows you that it's not like so divisive as you might think. It's like, oh, he's on the Sony camp, and we're going to bring our own people. Now he's not working with Marvel anymore. He got like cut out. Marvel's like, hey, he's awesome. Bring him on over to Netflix, or the people who are running Daredevil. The Daredevil. Hey, bring him back. He's not on Sinister Six anymore. Bring him over here if he wants to come in and play back in this universe. So I'm looking forward to the Punisher Netflix series, Moon Knight. That's what I've been hearing. They're like already, as soon as they wrap up the Defenders, they're going to launch these other four series. So it all depends on how these next ones go. Like if Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, if those pop off, they're going to be like, oh, we're lining these up for the next run. So hopefully, we'll know like when does it's in May, right? 2016 for Daredevil. I think I heard it's May.
Okay.
So. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. All right, George Miller and Brainiac together again. They just can't be separated. Every other week, someone's telling me that Man of Steel's on indefinite hold. Who's that? I don't even know. They never named the source. But like I said a few weeks ago, restating this week, Man of Steel 2 is happening. It's not on indefinite hold. And now George Miller has stated he hasn't decided whether he will be directing that or Justice League Dark. Also, Brainiac's been mentioned to be the villain by Snyder himself when they were talking about before Batman v Superman became that. They were talking about Man of Steel. They're going to have a villain from outer space directly related to the Codex. So I think, that's probably not going to be Darkseid. They're saving that for Justice League. So it points towards a Brainiac type character. So, and another great thing is at Long Beach Comic-Con, I ran into Marv Wolfman. And he's the guy who actually created the Brainiac that we know now. He's the guy who made the Brainiac, not just the green guy with the weird like metal, implants on his head. He actually made the skull ship and the ability for Brainiac to be in all computers at one time. I mean, Marv Wolfman, if you don't know who that is, look him up. He's a Titan, like a Teen Titan writer. So let's move on to that. What do you think of these quotes that we heard?
Well,
about
a couple of things. First of all, George Miller never stated that he is trying to decide between Man of Steel and Justice League Dark. He's never said that. There is one rumor out there right now that says, first of all, George Miller's never even said that he's talking to DC, which we believe he is. But the notion that he's been offered Superman, Zack Snyder has also said he's never heard of Miller being offered Superman, but he would love to have Miller in the DC cinematic universe, obviously. This all comes from one rumor online that one person put out without naming a source. So I'm very dubious of that at all. I don't think Justice League Dark is happening. I do not think it's on the DC.
I don't either. But I'm just saying, like, the rumors that we're going with is like whether it's on indefinite hold, which I don't believe.
I don't believe that at all. I mean, I'm with you the whole time. No, Warner Brothers.
I'm just saying that because that's what I read. And I was like, okay, so they're still playing up that Justice League Dark because Guillermo left that. I think that's going to stay dark for a while. They don't want to confuse people with Justice League.
There. I saw what you did there. That was clever.
Justice League and then Justice League Dark. They're like, look, we got the Justice League. We're going to leave the other one alone. So it kind of makes sense. Like, what else will he do? I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I think you've been right all along about the Man of Steel thing. I do believe they have their plans for Man of Steel, but it's the same thing. They never said what their Batman plans were when they laid out that roadmap of here's all of our cinematic films coming out. They never mentioned Batman. They never mentioned Man of Steel, but we know they had their plans. We know they have a roadmap. I don't think it's going to happen until 2019, 2020. I don't think it's going to happen for either of them until that time frame, but I completely agree with you. Reject that notion that it's on indefinite hold. It's never been on hold. They're right on their schedule. They know when they want it to come out, and it'll come out at that time. And I, for one, would be very curious to see a George Miller direct it if it did indeed happen.
Yeah.
Are you saying Man of Steel 2019, 2020?
Man of Steel 2, yes.
George Miller ain't no spring chicken.
Well, okay, this is true.
Right. And we're in the 2015 right
Clint
now.
Eastwood's still directing.
I know. And I hope that he can direct for another 20 years. The man doesn't look like he lost a step.
That would probably mean filming in 2017.
Sure. It doesn't look like he lost a step in Mad Max. He looked like a 20-year-old shot.
Right. Yeah. Top of his game.
Top of his game for sure. And I would love to see him do Man of Steel too. But think of it as business owners too, that you still have to look at it like, okay, we look at George. It's like, look at a fighter, if you want to put it as far as a boxer goes. A boxer at 34 could look young, and then the same boxer at 35 could look very old, depending on the fight, depending on whatever happened. It's the same thing with directors, and as age goes, you don't. And who knows what Mad Max took out of him? To all that travel and all that stuff too,
and all that on-set drama that we've heard about.
Everything, all of it. You know, it's like I mean, another sports analogy with basketball coaches and everything too. It wears and tears for enough. But the thing is, you want this guy to direct something, just for the buzz alone that it would cause when you say George Miller is doing Man of Steel 2. Boom! Yeah. Yes, sign me up. I want to see it. Let's get into production right away. I hope it happens sooner than later. I would much rather him do that movie than Justice League Dark for the exact reasons you guys are talking about. I am not as in it as you guys are with the comics and stuff. I don't know what Justice League Dark is, so I go, well, does that combine into what the actual Justice League is? Right. And I'm like, well, then I get confused. Like you just said, I'm one of those people that would get confused. Man of Steel 2, I'm not going to be confused, and I want to see it developed, and I want to see someone other than Zack Snyder do it, because Zack Snyder's doing Justice League.
Yeah, he's doing Justice League and Justice League 2. He's locked in on that.
And he's Batman vs. Superman, Justice League. He's going to have all these characters to deal with. Let him move. I want to see someone else do Man of Steel 2. Why not George Miller? So I hope that it actually happens sooner than later.
And then a bunch of rumors just popped off earlier today talking about not only Brainiac, but bringing in Supergirl, like the Supergirl from Man of Steel, and how that ties in with Brainiac and Bizarro. And so who knows?
Because they tease her in the first movie,
yeah,
right?
Well, they did a comic book pre-teaser, and they said, that she...
And they showed the empty pod.
Right.
Who was in the empty pod?
Right, so it's like, unless you read the online comic book, which not a lot of people did, who knows? It's like, if you didn't see, there's like a 4-page online comic book showing... what's her name again? Kara, thanks. Dropping down like 20,000 years ago on Earth. So who knows what how they're going to tie that in. They're going to tie it in. They're not just saying that and leaving that as a weird Easter egg and never going to talk about it again. But I don't think they're going to wait that long to 2019 to release Man of Steel. If you look at their slate, I think 2017 has only 2 DC movies. 2018 only has 2 DC movies. And 2019.
Only.
But I'm saying only compared to Marvel, who has 3. They start popping off 3
In a couple
every
years,
year.
or next year they start
2017.
going.
Yeah.
17 they start doing 3. Right?
So I would wager that when Batman v Superman comes out, they are going to then drop the Batman and Man of Steel 2 and the Batman 2, and they're going to just place their little mines for the next 5 years or so. That would make sense.
And not to just bring up Star Wars here, but I think that because of December, we're going to learn a lot more about the state of those months, November and December, because those are going to become prime real estate for these movies.
Oh, yeah.
December is going to be, like you said, if you're putting out 3 movies, you're going to put probably out, depending also on what Batman vs. Superman does in March. March might be a slot, the midsummer, and then December. Those are 3 slots that if you're DC or Marvel, you want to take, and especially to see if Star Wars cracks, 170, 200 million in December. Well, it's possible. Let's do it. Let's put in Justice League in December, and then Man of Steel 2 in May, or vice versa, whatever. It definitely could happen.
But here's the thing, though, with all the stuff you guys are bringing up, the drama we saw play out when Captain America and Batman v Superman was on the same date. When we get to the point that, now, just to be clear, we haven't heard that DC has any plans to go to 3 movies a year, but it's going to come.
Right.
Once Marvel is doing 3 a year, once DC is doing 3 a year, and once Fox gets into the 1 a year game, right there you have 8 comic book films. Blockbuster. Now let's forget about all the other blockbusters.
Right. Just regular movies.
Star Wars, what Pirates of the Caribbean, Apes, forget all the old. Let's just talk about the comic book ones for a second. Those 3 slots you were talking about, the early pre-summer, the midsummer. So you're probably talking about March, April, then you're talking probably around July, and then the Christmas season, the December season. But you're going to have 8 comic book films, not to mention all the other blockbusters. Those 3 slots are going to start getting really crowded, really fast. And that game of chicken that we saw between Batman v Superman and Captain America, what we now know as Civil War, we are going to see that play out a couple of times every year. Like maybe not same date, but it's going to be unavoidable that a lot of these films aren't going to be able to be more than 1 or 2 weeks apart from each other. It's going to be nuts.
Disney's doing it to himself. We talked about it last week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Guardians and Episode 8 come out like within
2
3
weeks apart.
weeks apart from each other. Their own studios are doing it to each other, to itself right now. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's going to happen a lot.
I guess that's a win-win situation. They're like, we get all the money. It's like they're fighting
the
each
Disney
other.
one is.
Yeah.
But it's a win for us.
Right.
I mean, we win.
Yeah, we win constantly with this. Like 8 movies plus regular movies. What's going on? So, all right, guys, let's go to Minor Mutations. This week on Minor Mutations, we've got Sean Bean and Eva Green as the villains in Wonder Woman. Now, who they're going to be playing, but that's what we've heard. They're possibly going to be playing the villains in their Wonder Woman movie. We've got a new picture of Apocalypse from X-Men Apocalypse. And did this change fan reaction? We've got Legends of Tomorrow showing off both Hawkman and Hawkgirl and Vandal Savage. We've got Simon Kinberg talking about, wanting to do Fantastic Four 2 with the same cast for the fans, of course. And Kinberg also saying that they're already planning doing a Deadpool sequel based on reaction to an early cut. So let's talk about some of this crazy news that we're like, what pops off to you, Kristian?
For me, the craziest one is Kinberg talking about the Fantastic Four cast coming back. Yeah, I mean that's nuts.
Yeah.
Now, I also think part of that is because he worked pretty close with them, has a lot of confidence with them. It's not the actor's fault of what happened with that movie, as we've talked about many times. But to want to have them come back, I still think what we said last week holds true. The only way you can save Fantastic Four right now is if you put them in an X-Men movie. Now, I don't know what kind of deal Fox has with Marvel to allow that to happen, but I hope that it does happen. The other story to me is the Apocalypse picture, because are we confirmed now that this is legit? No, we're not confirmed yet. If it is legit, though, I think it looks a million times better and closer to what we kind of all hope. So I think it did change fan reaction if it is indeed legit. If it isn't, we don't know, and we could still be getting the Power Ranger villain.
Well, you know what's weird about that picture? Because that picture came from the same set of pictures where it looked like somebody was at an edit bay. Yeah. And it was also like 3 other photos from it was Jean Grey and Cyclops and Nightcrawler. And then that same green screen image, but pushed back even farther with all 3 of them. So it's hard to tell obviously these days anybody can slap some Photoshop stuff together and make things happen and make it look cool. I think that picture of Apocalypse is real, but you know what weirds me out is it's the exact same makeup as the first picture, only he's blue and it's a different angle, and fans went nuts. Like, no, this is the Apocalypse that I want. It's the exact same, because I zoomed in on that first picture.
The coloring was different?
Just the coloring.
I thought the coloring, the details in the face.
No.
I thought there was a lot of significant
There's
differences.
nothing different.
Really?
I'd hate to tell you guys.
I disagree.
Yeah, I gotta disagree on that.
What I need you're just wrong. I'm telling you.
No, I'm telling you, you're wrong.
No,
I looked at
I
that.
will bet you. I will bet you $50 on camera right now how wrong you are. Yeah.
I might take a piece.
Because
of
it's
that.
like
color, eyes, smile. Aside that, everything's the same.
no. Everything is exactly the same. The detail on the face, the makeup. It's just because it's from a different angle and they change the color. He's not purple anymore. He's blue, which is like the Apocalypse that we all know.
his head looked different though. No.
Nope. Same exact makeup.
I mean, I disagree, but despite us agreeing to disagree on that, I simply, it's the point's moot. I don't think the picture's real at all.
Okay.
I really don't. Now, some people were saying, what we saw before was just the unfinished thing. No. You don't put something on the cover of Entertainment Weekly magazine when it's your unfinished
No, that's
thing.
a finished
No,
one.
that is their finished thing. Now, once again, always got to preface this by saying, it is possible that it's real. It is you cannot remove the possibility that it's real. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. But that 1 time out of 10, but I happen to believe this is one of the 9 times out of 10. I do not believe that picture is legitimate. So I paid it. I'm like you. I paid it no attention whatsoever. Like a lot of people were tweeting it to me, and I was just like, you know what? I know it's not real. Well, I know it's not real
Until Bryan Singer tweets it out.
Until Bryan Singer tweets it out, whatever. To me, it's just not real. It's not worth even thinking about.
Right on. I choose to believe it's real, and it's the same exact makeup.
And you will probably end up being right. Not about the makeup part, but about it being real.
I think it's real, and it's the same makeup. All right, let's move on. I think the interesting news was Sean Bean and Eva Green being cast as the villains, because now in the Wonder Woman comic, she always fought Mars. So if it's true that they're going to actually go with her mythological origin, the Greek origin, then that would then bring in this character of Mars and these maybe not living on Mars, but like these kinds of characters who they chose to believe as me as like, I call myself the god of war, things like that. It's very interesting. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the movie itself. What do you guys think about that as far as that casting? Anything?
I mean, Eva Green, I think it makes sense. I mean, she's kind of already done it in 300. She played that type of character. The second, whatever it was called, Rise of an Empire.
She single-handedly put that movie on her shoulders and made it watchable.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And you can see her
carried that film.
Yeah, she really
that's
did.
when you said that, when you read that story, I went, my head just flashed back to that right away, and I was like, okay, yeah, I could see her fighting Wonder Woman and probably kicking Wonder Woman's ass.
Right. Sean Bean, Game of Thrones, and an incredible film if you haven't seen it, Black Death. He's been in a lot.
I thought you were going to say Jupiter Ascending.
Right, no.
Can we also throw in money? How long before Sean Bean dies in the movie?
Oh,
Yeah,
hopefully
15
they can
He
keep
dies
him
and
on.
everything.
But the one on this list that stands out to me is the one of the Simon Kinberg thing. And we talked about it on Movie Talk earlier today, but I'm glad you brought something up that I forgot to address earlier today, which is in his comments about that he's really focused on bringing Fantastic Four 2 with the same cast. I know we made a good movie.
Right.
We just got to do all this kind of stuff. And he emphasized, got to do it for the fans. I love the fans. It's the most important thing in the world. Now, maybe I've been inside too long. I'm not hearing any fans asking him for a Fantastic Four 2. Have you heard anybody asking for Fantastic Four 2? I haven't heard anybody asking for it.
No.
So who's Simon talking to?
That's why I was like, I kind of added that just because he's doing it for the fans. Yeah, that's what it's like. It's a funny thing when you get interviewed a lot of times. I'm sure like you have to keep saying the same stuff. So for him, it's like, hey, what's people are asking about? Well, you've already announced Fantastic Four 2, so he has to have an answer, and he doesn't want to just say, look, we're like thinking about it. We don't have an answer. Instead, he's kind of glad handing it and saying, look, everyone was cool in that. We definitely want to do something. There's a lot of stuff to explore. But then we're mentioning in the same breath, he's talking about Deadpool already doing a sequel. That's a very easy swap to put Deadpool 2 in that where that Fantastic Four 2 space is. I see that coming soon.
But he's really focused.
He's very focused
On Fantastic Four.
Well, the thing you got to realize also,
You're right. The focus is on Fantastic Four 2.
Simon Kinberg's one of my favorite guys in this business.
He's awesome.
He's great,
super awesome.
but he's also a great politician.
Yes.
And that means that he remember when all this stuff happened with Trank, and he was defending him right off the bat because he's got to protect the movie. Right. Simon Kinberg protects his movies. He protects his properties. Simon Kinberg comes out clean every single time because he does it right. He does it smart. he'll do something like this because look, he'll say I also think he means by the fans are the fans of the Fantastic Four. There are tons of fans for the Fantastic Four property. So if it goes away and there's never a sequel, you think anyone's going to be saying, well, Simon Kinberg said we were going to do it for the fans. No, it's a nice thing for him to say.
Right.
It's just a matter. You're right, though. It sounds ludicrous considering how silly it is, but he's not going to say, well, that was a stinker. That's not who he is.
To prove your point, he's not saying, I am doing it. He said, "I'd really like to." Like he's made no guarantees.
Right. Yeah, when I call him politician, I'm not. There are good politicians and bad politicians. I happen to think he's one of the good politicians.
There's a lot of openings there. Jump through the Swiss cheese statement. You know, it's good. And you know, I loved X-Men Days of Future Past. I'm really looking forward to what he wrote for Apocalypse, and that's what we're gonna get from him.
I'm excited.
Next. So, the last thing is Hawkman, Hawkgirl. I just want to get your reactions to that costume. What do you think?
It looked like a Hawkman and Hawkgirl costume.
Yeah. So I agree.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, in the same boat. I was like, All right. Let's move on to a segment I call Flashback, where we're going to talk about a movie that came out several years back. Sometimes it's 30 years ago. Sometimes it's 4 years ago. A film that helped move films either forward or backwards in the superhero world. This week, we're going to talk about Iron Man. Now, this is a film that really started the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Jon Favreau directed the first of many of the shared cinematic universes for Marvel with Iron Man. He fought to get Robert Downey Jr., who was at the time that this was made, 2007, box office poison. It came out in 2008, but
nobody wanted to work.
No one wanted to work with him. He had a lot of problems, and so he's playing Shellhead and Tony Stark. He got cast. The results were felt around the world. We all loved the movie. It launched the Marvel movie empire that we know now, and we can't think of anyone else playing the role of Iron Man, who in 2007, you could have polled everybody to be like, I don't know who Iron Man is, except for diehard fans. Now the globe knows who Iron Man is, and it's thanks to the team that put this together. Kevin Feige, Jon Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., everyone who's involved. What are your thoughts about Iron Man, John?
Well, I'm sure there's more than three, but really there are three movies that really stand out to me that I mercilessly shit-talked before they came out, believing they were terrible ideas and wouldn't work. One was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that just came out recently, and I ended up really liking it.
I did too.
And when I say three, no, I have crap talked more than three movies, but three movies that I crap talked long before they ever came out, and then turned out really liking them. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek, which I ended up loving, and Iron Man. For the longest time, when they announced Iron Man, I was like, it's just a poor man's Bruce Wayne. It's just another rich guy with no powers who uses his money to use gadgets to go and fight crime at different levels. And I smack talked Iron Man, thinking it was, and then we saw the infamous Comic-Con trailer. And that changed the narrative, as it turns out, forever. It changed suddenly overnight. Perception of comic book movies, that especially what Marvel was trying to do, was changed. It was completely different now. And what they did in that movie, you're right, it is hard today to imagine what Iron Man would be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe had Favreau not had the vision to want Robert Downey Jr. and fight to have, because Marvel did not want Robert Downey Jr. in that movie. The studio did not want Robert Downey Jr. for good reason. They weren't just being sticks in the mud. I mean, he had Robert Downey Jr. up to that point had consistently just sabotaged himself.
Very hard to get insurance.
Very hard to get insurance.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons they didn't want him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of reasons they didn't want him. And today now it's hard to imagine anybody other than him. I mean, and so it started the whole thing off. There is no Marvel Cinematic Universe if it wasn't for the success of that first one. And it also kind of kicked off a lot of the trends we see in Marvel films. Half-assed villains, things like that. Sure, but overall, with such who thinks about the dude in Iron Man? We don't. A lot of people don't even remember he's in that movie. That's how bad of a villain it was. But it didn't matter because the Iron Man that Jon Favreau created with his muse Robert Downey Jr., that character kind of became the blueprint for what the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be, and you will never be able to overemphasize the importance of that film.
Right.
Yeah. The irony is when we're talking about Marvel versus DC and everything too, I personally think that if you don't have DC at a point in time in the 2008 era, you don't get the Marvel Cinematic Universe because The Dark Knight came out the same year as Iron Man.
That's right.
People were so excited because of what Batman Begins did in 2005.
Right.
That really kickstarted the because X-Men 3 almost destroyed what it started with X-Men 1 and
Yes.
2. But then you got Dark Knight and your Batman Begins, and then Dark Knight. You got those two movies. Like, oh well, superhero movies are cool again. And then Iron Man took that time and took what Batman Begins did and said, no, we're going to make a cool movie too. Because by making a great movie like Iron Man, that's when Marvel was able to step back in the game because they had so many misfires before that. And you're right, John, in the way that you said it always reminded me of Bruce Wayne. I was actually going into it optimistic. I was, but I did always see it as Bruce Wayne. It's pretty much the same thing, especially the fact that I was going up against the Dark Knight that year. But there was just something special about what Robert Downey Jr. did and the tone of Favreau, and it had depth to it. It also played on those problems that Stark had. I mean, that Downey had with Stark. It was the perfect character for him to play. He had a lot of the same issues that Robert Downey Jr. had. So it was kind of the perfect casting. But understanding why Marvel would be, well, wait a minute. But Favreau went to bat for his friend, and there's a reason why we have that movie fails. We're not talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the things we don't give Robert Downey Jr. enough credit for is, and I think it's because we're so enamored with a lot of the stuff that he's done since, but is the fact that he, burned himself out of Hollywood. People didn't want to work with him because of his drug problems and other problems that he did. He got another shot, on a whim on Ally McBeal. And he was great on Ally McBeal. I don't think he lasted a whole season. They had to fire him. He blew it again because of drug use
and done a bunch of stuff.
All this he just sabotaged himself again and again. Since that time, and I don't think we give Robert Downey Jr. the credit that he deserves of this. Since that time, he has kept his crap together.
Well, he credits his wife for it too, because they met on when she was working at Silver's company. They met and he did like Gothica and stuff, and he credits her for getting him back on track. And they've been together since, and he's been clean as a whistle since. So.
Yeah, which is awesome, and he should be applauded for that.
And I think the chemistry of everyone who's together on Iron Man really worked because you have another Marvel movie, The Hulk, The Incredible Hulk, come out the same year, and it wasn't the box office hit that Iron Man was, and it also didn't connect with the fans the way Iron Man did. So, I mean, a lot of that weighs on Robert Downey Jr.
Definitely.
and his characterization of Tony Stark. And he was able to characterize, like you said, in a lot of ways in the comic book, I mean, he's different in many ways, but it could be interpreted as a poor man's Bruce Wayne, but he reveals, I am Iron Man at the very end. I mean, there's all these different things that they did that help differentiate, who Tony Stark is from Bruce Wayne. Right. So, and also that he's got a lot of problems. That Tony Stark, just as a human being, is blames himself for things, but then does things that make everything worse, like creating Ultron. So all these different things. So he's trying to help, but in also a weird way that ultimately he's like his own worst enemy.
It's an interesting character because when I had a chance to sit down and talk with Robert Downey Jr. a few months ago, what I said, one of the things I loved about Tony Stark in Age of Ultron, I said this to him, I said, there's always been this wall between the bravado of Tony Stark and the insecurities of Tony Stark. And what we see happening throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe and then ultimately culminating kind of in Age of Ultron is that veil between the two sides are getting thinner and thinner. His insecurities are now starting to play on his bravado, and his bravado is starting to play on his insecurities. The way he's bringing that out and the evolution of that character is right. So when he's creating Ultron, a part of that is his bravado getting into his insecurities. It's like, I'm Tony Stark. Anything I do is going to be totally cool. So it's his own ego and his insecurities. And I think they have just done a really great job. This Tony Stark we saw in Age of Ultron, despite he may have the same kind of lines, that is a different Tony Stark than the first.
Totally.
They've done such a great job evolving him as they go. Yeah.
I hope that they continue that into Civil War, because what I'm nervous about with Civil War is that because in the comics it goes down. I'm worried about them doing kind of like friendly fire stuff. And
I think that's what's going to be.
It's disappointing because I think that kind of takes away the possibility of the evolution of Stark to go even more so, because I'm sure we're going to get a version of it. We kind of have to in order for the story to progress. But I want to see where his mind goes in order for him to think that it's all right to go after these people he was fighting with for so long. Like, what point does he rationalize and go, this needs to be done?
Sure. I mean, how many people think that Tony Stark's going to be the one who dies instead of Captain America in Civil War?
Marvel wouldn't do it money-wise, I think.
Well, you never know. I mean,
Yeah, no,
I'm just saying nobody dies anyway. We were talking about that. They'll just come back in
Right,
Infinity
true,
Gem.
true.
Like the Gem of Vision brought him back to life or
Right,
whatever.
But remember,
right.
what I think is going to happen in Civil War with Tony is is that post-credit scene in Ant-Man, we see Falcon and Cap talking. It's like, well, what about Tony? Let's get a hold of Tony. It's like, he wouldn't be able to do anything. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those situations where Tony is like on the side of the government, but he's faithful to his friends, but okay, the government's telling me to do this. But it feels like there's still going to be like some kind of back channel communication between them. And it's almost going to be like they're fighting for show. I just don't think it's going to be that two sides firmly against each other. I don't think we're going to see
Bummer,
that.
because that's what they're selling it as.
It
Right
could
now.
still wind up being great. It just,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a different movie than what we're hoping for.
Well, Well, we only have a few months left to find out, right?
Yeah. True.
It's like 6 months or something. All right, let's move on to something I'm calling Spotlight, where we take a comic book that has not been turned into a TV series or a movie. We talk about it and try to convince you, the future producers of our globe, to make this happen. This week, we've got Girls. Now, this is the Luna brothers. They've done several incredible graphic novels that I think they've got to be adapted. I covered one maybe a couple months ago called The Sword, and that was incredible. Now we're going to talk about Girls. Now, Girls is basically the very quick answer to it. It's a small town that's overrun by an endless number of
girls.
naked female girls, like incredibly beautiful women who kind of attack this small town, which, creates chaos. Not only that, but, it starts out with one naked girl.
Eva Green.
She lays eggs. And then she basically builds a bunch of other clone versions of herself that grow into full adult naked females. So it gets super weird. As you saw from the art, it's very well done. Are you guys familiar with this comic series?
Not at all.
All right,
no,
well,
not in the least.
Let me tell you guys.
When did this one come out?
This came out, I guess, I'd say about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So this came out before The Sword. This is the one that kind of put the Luna brothers on the map. And I gotta say, it is fun. It's weird. It's really well drawn, and it is a horror series that is begging to be made, either as a film or as an HBO series or Showtime. You got to have naked women in it. That's just they just can't just show up with a dress. They're born in an egg. They have to be naked. So it's got your nudity already built in, and it's a great story. It's freaky, and why it's great is not because of the naked ladies. It's great because it shows you how it takes a small town, and also a weird force field appears like a big dome over. They've already done the dome, but this is different. Just basically cutting off these 61 people from the rest of the world so they can't leave the town. And there's more of these weird, freakish, like almost vampiric ladies who, if you don't have sex with them, they'll kill you. And if you're female, they'll kill you. So they're basically, these women are around to make men have sex with them so they can lay more eggs of themselves. Then there's this giant weird, like kind of weird egg thing that's like filled with sperm or something. I don't know what it is. That's on the outside of the town. They're like, what's going on? But it basically pits all the townspeople against each other. The men and the women start not trusting each other, like, because they're like, you slept with one of them? I didn't even know it attacked me. And so it becomes this super weird kind of story about how men and women and the way they relate to each other over the series of 24 issues. That's what it becomes all about.
It sounds like Species meets Stepford Wives meets
Oh, it's got all
the
that.
Dome
meets the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then the one that Scarlett Johansson they released. What was that one that she did?
The
yeah,
Void.
Not the Void.
not the Void. It's
Shoot.
where she's the alien.
Yeah.
She's like
The Skin. Under the Skin.
Under the Skin.
Yeah.
That's a great film.
Reminds me of that.
It definitely has vibes of that. I would love to see that kind of tone attached to this film, The Girls. So, if you guys haven't checked out the Luna Brothers, The Sword, I know a bunch of you wrote to me and said you bought the graphic novel series, The Sword, and loved it. I highly recommend Girls. You'll get a kick out of it. It's their take on a horror film.
Not to be confused with the HBO TV series.
Right.
They cross
It's
over
different.
eventually.
Yeah,
Lena Dunham is like,
It's one
look,
cinematic
she
universe.
likes to get naked too. So
all
it's like,
do, yeah.
that's the comparison there. All right, here we go with Twitter questions, guys and gals. This week, we've got Derek Struble asking, do you guys think we'll get the Church of Universal Truth in Guardians of the Galaxy 2? What about Shuma Gorath and Doctor Strange 2? Thanks. Well, Derek, I hate to disappoint you, but Shu McGorath will not be seen in Doctor Strange. I have no idea. What do you guys think? These are strange, weird characters in both of these bizarre, ultra-dimensional, and cosmic outer space series. I don't know if you guys know who these characters are, but I highly doubt that they're going to be showing up in any of the sequels very soon.
Well, with the Church of Universal Truth, I mean, they remind me a lot of... what's that one Vin Diesel the sci-fi franchise he's got?
Necromongers.
They remind me a lot of the Necromongers.
The Riddick Chronicles of Riddick.
Thank you. It reminds me a lot of the Necromongers from the second Riddick film. I do not think we're going to see them in this, at least not in the sequel.
Right.
But they make sense for like a Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or a Guardians of the Galaxy 4. They do make sense. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we hear at some point, but I doubt everything I'm hearing from James Gunn right now. I really doubt that we're going to see them for 2. As far as the Doctor Strange thing, no, I don't think. I think we got a pretty clear understanding about who our villains are going to be for the first one, but you never know, could open up the door for later on.
I think you get a better shot at the Church than the Doctor Strange one because James Gunn plays in the obscure, and you could see him. If somebody can make it work and someone can it's James Gunn. He might be going through the comics saying, well, what if we introduce it this way? You could see it's possible that he does it. I don't think either one will be, but out of the two of them, I think it's probably a better possibility because James Gunn's fan could go through these things if it fits his story. He's not just going to throw something in there to throw it in there. If it fits and whatever the storyline is for Guardians, and then they're going to play a part down the line, then maybe we see him.
Now, something with Doctor Strange that I would love to see are the mindless ones. Now, the mindless ones are just these creatures, like kind of rock-like monsters that are always shooting lasers out of their eyes, and they're always fighting each other. So it's just that's what that universe is. Completely consists of these creatures. And a couple of comic book series through Doctor Strange's years of history have been like, release the mindless ones on New York, and then a portal opens and these weird things just start lasering and blowing stuff up. It's the perfect answer to like Ultron with his robots, or Thanos with his millions of like weird bug creature Chitauri. That would be a perfect ending for a Doctor Strange movie where if Dormammu's like, I shall release the mindless ones, it's like they look cool, there's a billion of them, just throw them back in the portal at the end, try to keep the damage to a minimum. I don't know if they would do that, but they look really cool. So I personally, as a nerd fan of Doctor Strange, want to see the mindless ones.
Let's
before
see
I see
a Marvel villain opening a portal that brings through an army of destructive beings in New York.
That's right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Totally original.
Wait a
Never
minute,
been done before.
I know, right?
It's only been done 3 times.
I know. God, that probably won't be done again. Or not. Yes. All right, next question. We got Richard Roberts writing to us saying, the rock that the kid is swimming towards in the Batman v Superman trailer is actually a guy with a hood over his head. Could it be Waterman? Do you guys know the scene that the very quick scene?
I've seen lots of still shots of this and people saying, oh, it's actually a figure. It's not just a rock. Maybe there's nothing definitive there. Why is Waterman, Spicy Larry, Aquaman sitting just in 6 feet of water, just sitting there like
very shallow?
I'm just thinking, guys. Like I don't see it.
I think it might be, and I think don't we also see him when there's another shot of him too, like when it's underneath the water as well too. Like, is that what we're talking about? The scene because there's
we see the kid diving. The camera's underwater.
Yeah, that's
and
the one.
Dives into the water, going. Yeah,
I've looked at it a few times. I actually do think it is Aquaman, and I think that's going to be something along the lines of when we after we see the movie or maybe even the next trailer. You're like, oh, that was a nice little Easter egg. Snyder's done that to us a couple times.
Sure. In one scene, then show a little additional extra moment of that scene.
And he did it throughout Man of Steel with the little shots of LexCorp and Wayne Tower and the little things that he's thrown in there through the movie. And then this is going to be a little bit more prominent because Aquaman's going to have not a huge role, but he's going to be visible in this film. So I think that you've shown a lot of the characters that Wonder Woman had a little bit more time in the trailer, but I think that was Aquaman.
All right, let's hope it is. We definitely looking forward to seeing the next trailer. I hope they show a scene of Aquaman. The next question is Nahib asks, do you think Black Panther can beat Cap one-on-one in the movies like he does in the comics? Now, everything I've heard is Civil War, there is going to be a scene where Captain America goes toe-to-toe with Black Panther, which that's what we want to see. Any comic book nerd who's seen any of the Cap versus Black Panther fights throughout all the different years. That'd be cool. What do you guys think? You think it's going to happen?
100%.
Oh, 100%. I don't think Black Panther wins that fight, but I think the fight happens 100%. Absolutely.
I think it happens, and I think Black Panther whoops up on Cap.
Really?
Yeah, because what a way to introduce him. Yeah. What a way to introduce Black Panther as a character that not a lot of people are familiar with, besides people who are watching this show, and but not a lot of people who know who he is. He comes out there and kicks Captain America's ass. You're going to remember him right away.
But you know what? Think of what Marvel did in Ant-Man. When they wanted to give us our first look at Ant-Man fighting, what they do, they put him up against Falcon, and they go toe-to-toe, and essentially, it essentially ends in a draw, although Ant-Man kind of wins.
That's Ant-Man's movie, though.
Oh, no, that's Ant-Man's movie. So I have a feeling you are going to see him go toe-to-toe. I think Captain America wins, but either way, I think it's going to be basically at the end of the day, you could probably sit back and say it's a draw. I think that's the way they're going to do it.
Yeah,
although it'd be cool if they did it your way, though.
Yeah.
It would be cool if they did it your way.
If he does, you're like, well, who's that guy? And then even if it's later on, because he always has something up on him.
Or you know what? Even if it is a draw, then Cap's going to be the one who's like, all right, I give up. Like, let's stop fighting or something.
He calls it.
He calls it. So, yeah, it's good points. Last question. We got Ray De Jesus asks, do you think Red Skull could be the ultimate villain in the MCU, being that he never died, or will he still fall to Thanos? So we saw him in Captain America, the First Avenger, kind of like holding the cube, disappeared, got zoomed out into one of the 9 realms. We don't know if he's alive or dead. We're guessing he's alive. What do you guys think? How do you think Red Skull is going to fall into either Civil War, Infinity 1 and 2?
I mean, I hope he comes back. I mean, I think he's one of the best villains that we've had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. It's him, Loki, and I don't know who else you can really say. Like, Red Skull was great, and they did open it up to where is he? And I know that they said Hugo Weaving wasn't coming back. Maybe they're going to try to get him back. I'd like to see him come back in the next Avengers movie, parts 1 and 2. I think because if he's teamed up with Thanos, or maybe they have to defeat him and Thanos, then that gives a lot. The stakes become higher. I don't think he's going to show up in Red Skull in Civil War unless it's at the very end in the post credits.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Loki, Red Skull's the one villain in these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that they really did right. That when he came on screen, you're like, yes, he's on screen again.
Right.
Yeah, and a big part of that goes to Hugo Weaving. Yeah. I mean, Hugo Weaving is he's unbelievably talented. They did have the ending in Captain America the way they had it, him going off and I think, remember, he fell into something that looked almost exactly like what Loki then fell into at the end of the first Thor, and Loki came back. They had plans for Red Skull. The problem became Hugo Weaving didn't want to come back. Now, just so you understand the situation, like a lot of the other actors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel does have him under a multiple film contract. Marvel does have the right, and Hugo Weaving knows this. He said this as much in interviews. If Marvel comes to him and says, look, we actually demand that you come back and do this, he'll do it. He'll have no choice. But I think Marvel is, probably doesn't want to make somebody do something they don't want to do. At the same time, they've had a number of years now to try to change his mind. And look, what hits has Hugo Weaving had since the Hobbit films are done? There's no more Matrix coming. He's not like he's appearing in everything, which is unfortunate because the dude is uber talented. He's incredible. If you gave me a choice, say, what villain would I really want to see? I want that Red Skull back, man. He was great in that first Captain America. I want to see him back. He's suave, smooth, intelligent, powerful, all these great things that make a great villain wrapped into one. I want to see him back.
And how powerful is he now? He's been gone for so long, and God knows where he's been.
And did he get any of those powers from the cube when he went away?
Yeah.
They've replaced a lot of Marvel characters, both good guys and bad guys. I mean, Don Cheadle came in, and now he's War Machine.
Right,
yeah.
True.
We had Fandral got replaced in the Thor movies.
We had multiple Hulks now. We had Edward Norton, and then he was going to be in the Avengers, but him and everybody...
He sabotaged himself.
But he obviously, it's Mark Ruffalo now. So, I wouldn't...
And Red Skull's going to be in the mask the whole time now.
So I wouldn't be that angry. In fact, I wouldn't be angry at all if they recast him.
But they got to recast him with someone.
They got to get a great actor. Huh?
Mads.
I know, right? He's the secret. He's like, Red Skull's not supposed to be Dr. Strange. It doesn't matter.
He is Red Skull in Doctor Strange.
I know.
You heard it here, folks.
That would be crazy.
Breaking scoop.
The very last question is, I always call it the sweaty question of the week, and this comes from Tom Huxley. He's like, hey, he's a huge fan of the Tick. Okay, Could the Tick have his own debut in this era, being in 2015? And if he does, should he be a CG or live blend like Deadpool? What do you guys think? I mean, they've already announced the Tick as being a new Amazon series, but I'm pretty sure they got Patrick Warburton, who was in, I believe, the 8-episode, run of the Tick from like about 10 or 15 years ago. They got him back. So
Did they get him back? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they got him back. He's
Animated
agreed to do it.
or-
Well, right now it's an Amazon pilot. So you know how Amazon rocks? They do one show and then they're going to.
Is it live action pilot or an animated?
It's live
pilot?
action.
I'll tell you what, the original Tick comics, even more than Milk and Cheese, I think are the funniest comics I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are just flat out hilarious. And when they cast Putty to play the Tick,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a light in heaven. It was like,
Right.
of course he's the Tick. And then you watch that, and I can't remember what they called Deflator Mouse. They called him something different in the TV show. But I thought the TV show was ripping hilarious. I know a lot of people didn't appreciate it as much as me, but for whatever reason, I thought he was outstanding in that. So I would love to see, well, first of all, let's see if the Amazon thing actually makes it to series.
Right.
And let's see how that turns out. But that aside, if you were just asking me today and there wasn't the Amazon thing coming, just ask me, hey, would you want to see a Tick movie? Damn right I want to see a Tick movie. If you do it right, it can be absolutely outstanding and hilarious.
I don't know if I'd want to see a live action movie. I think that I do want to see the series and see how that plays out, but I almost think that it would serve better as an animated film in the vein of the Pixar type animation,
Mm-hmm.
that with the type of humor that not going away from the humor that made it successful in the first place, but as a live action movie, it might have already served its time.
Right on. Well, I know that they brought in Ben Edlund, the creator of the Tick, and he's back
Right.
on for the Amazon pilot. So, and he's a great guy. So check out his band sometime if you ever see him. He plays around in L.A. dressed as a tiger.
One of the great comic villains of all time too is one of the guys in the Tick called Chairface, and he's a guy who has a slight deformity at birth. His head is a chair. His head is a big wooden chair. And in the comics and in the animated series, his big crime caper was he's taking this giant laser and he was going to do graffiti by etching out chair face on the moon. So everybody, and the Tick and author stop him, but not until he got the first 3 letters. So now for the rest of the comic series and for the rest of the TV series, whenever you look at the moon, it just says cha. And every time they would show that, I would laugh. I don't
That's
know why,
amazing.
but I would.
Well, that's a great way to end this week's episode. You've been watching episode 25 of Collider's Hero. I'd love to thank our guest, Kristian Harloff. Thanks for being on the show. Where can people find you online?
Thanks for having me on the show. You can find me at Kristian Harloff on both Instagram and Twitter, and make sure that you check out Jedi Council, Collider Jedi Council. Usually it's every Thursday, but we're doing a very special episode tomorrow, and Jon Schnepp will be on the show tomorrow, as well as John Campea and Mark Ellis. So make sure you hashtag Collider Jedi Council and get your questions on the air, hopefully.
And John Campea, once again, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me Monday through Friday, of course, on Collider Movie Talk. Tomorrow on Jedi Council, right here on Heroes. On the weekend on Collider Mailbags, and on a couple of new after shows we have coming. Our official, I'm going to be on the Blacklist recap show and on the Flash recap show. So keep your eyes open for that. And of course, once again, just plug my new novel that's coming out in a couple of months, The Pride. Just go to Kickstarter.com, search for The Pride, and reserve your advanced copy now.
Right on it. I'm Jon Schnepp. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, just at Jon Schnepp and at TDOSLWH.com or at TDOSLWH. You can find me at Rose City Comic Con this coming weekend. Me and Holly will be out there promoting our film, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. It's in Portland, Oregon. So come on by if you live in Portland and say hello to us. And you can buy our film on the website, www.tdoslwh.com. Thanks again. I'll see you guys next week on Heroes.